Awesome. We've got a few people rolling in. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to talk all things knowledge governance. Let us know where you're joining from. We'd love to hear from you in the chat. Make sure you set your chat to everyone so we can see where you're joining us from. Moncton. Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining, Richard. Seattle. Nice. Got some East Coasters here. Some UK. Hi, Susan. Thanks for joining from the UK. Oh, Tucson, Arizona. It's probably much nicer there than it is on the East Coast right now in Canada. Awesome. Sugarland, Texas. Some Ontario folks. Welcome, everyone.
Great mix of people.
Hi, Travis. Thanks for joining. Fort McMurray, some West Coast representing. Love to see that. Georgia. Very nice. Texas, we got a few people from Texas today. Love it. I hope everyone's enjoying spring. It's so nice to have spring here finally. Felt like a long winter on the east coast of Canada. All right. We'll get started here in just a second. We just want to make sure we have everyone rolling in. We've got a great group here already. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Mel, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Procedureflow. Really excited to have my fellow colleagues with me today, Jacqueline and Kirsten as well. We're excited to talk knowledge governance with you all. And just for a little housekeeping, this session is being recorded, and we will be sharing out the recording with everyone that has registered and joined us today. So thank you again for joining, and we will make sure you get a copy of this recording and this great content we're about to share with you today. So just a reminder to everyone as well, if you'd like to chat with us and keep the conversation going while we're sharing this information today, please drop it in the webinar chat and set your chat to everyone. And if you have questions, we will have time at the end to answer these questions. We've made sure we save some time for that discussion. Please put those in our Q&A chat, and that'll just help us keep track of them and make sure we answer those questions at the end. With Jacqueline and Kirsten. So as I mentioned, I'm super excited to have my wonderful colleagues with me today. They are absolute experts in this area, and they kind of live and breathe this topic with our customers. And I'm just really excited that they're able to share some of their insights and expertise with you today. So we have Kirsten Hovey, our Director of Service Delivery, and our incredible Jacqueline Lowe, Director of Customer Success, as well, joining us today. They are going to share all kinds of good tips and tricks and insights with you on why knowledge governance is so important for your business and your team, and just your knowledge in general and your strategies. So I am going to turn this over to Jacqueline, who's going to be kicking us off and taking us through some of the topics today.
Amazing. Thanks, Mel. Hi, everybody. I see tons of familiar names popping up in the participants list here. We really appreciate everybody taking an hour out today to join us, or taking the hour later if you're going to go back and watch this recording. Kirsten and I have really been looking forward to this. Many of you know this is kind of what we get excited about talking to you about every day. And so it's really nice to kind of have an opportunity to bring you all together and talk high level. And then our hope for the conversation today is We say some interesting things, give you a little bit of insight about what our knowledge governance framework is, and then we would really love to continue these conversations. So just a little bit of a highlight of the agenda. Kirsten's going to kick things off and really start setting the stage by helping to define, what is knowledge governance, and then she'll provide a lot of helpful context about why adopting a knowledge governance strategy should matter to you and your organization. So we'll learn a little bit about what that really is. And then probably one of the themes we've learned a lot from you throughout this year is that automation strategies are probably of the utmost importance in terms of your strategic priorities this year. So we want to spend some time talking and understanding, how can you actually mature your knowledge best practices? It's a common question that we've been receiving a lot over the past year. So I'll take you through a little bit of our knowledge management value stages that we tend to set as defined milestones when our teams start to work with an organization. And our goals there are always, how can we help get both your employees and AI ready really quickly to build that foundation? So we're going to take you through those value stages. And then the bulk of today's conversation is really going to be peeling back the curtain. What is our knowledge governance framework that we live by? Which Kirsten and I's teams, we tend to follow for every implementation to try to set our customers up for that long-term operationalized success. So as Mel said, we'd love to hear what's on your mind throughout this conversation. Please do pop your comments and questions into the chat or QA section if you do have a specific question for us that you'd like us to address, and we'll try to take as many of those live as we can today. So that is the high-level plan. But before we dive a little bit too deep into knowledge governance, we do want to kind of help briefly define as well, what is knowledge management? Because it's really one piece of the knowledge governance strategy. So just to kind of all level set today, what is knowledge management? So when we think about knowledge management versus the governance strategy, so this is really, what am I planning, building, and monitoring in terms of processes? Its real goal is to help you kind of create that consistency. So we know, what are those outcomes that we're trying to get for consistent service delivery. And that's why we want to do knowledge management. And so to do knowledge management really effectively, you do need to establish the right framework that's going to enable you to do that again and again repetitively over time with the right people and resources, leading the charge behind that. And so that's specifically what we're going to dial into today. So Kirsten's going to kick us off with our approach.
Great. Thanks, Jacqueline, and welcome everybody. Some of you are experiencing Procedureflow's approach today, and for those of you who are new to Procedureflow, I'm going to take you through our approach to successful knowledge management. And it really starts foundationally with ensuring you have a strong knowledge strategy and governance. We believe that this solid foundation is really critical for ensuring growth, value, and success with any knowledge platform. So from there, we focus on the employee experience and performance. Employee experience is really at the heart of what we do. We know that visual knowledge is easier for employees to learn and to follow and to retain at the end of the day. And so we help increase employees' confidence, accuracy, and the overall success in their role by giving them absolutely everything they need to be successful in their role in a really easy to digest and visual format. And then we start to look at AI and automation to see where additional efficiencies can be added. So Procedureflow is a human-centric product with the minds of the subject matter experts at the core of the knowledge that Procedureflow houses. And while we're a human-centric product with the minds of the subject matter experts in there, we see a lot of value in leveraging AI and automation to drive more efficiencies for employees by streamlining workflows. And so you'll see that through our features and our integrations. And at the very top, at Procedureflow, we take a visual and strategic approach to managing those complex procedures that ensures your knowledge remains accurate, accessible to your employees, up to date, compliant, and most of all, collaborative. So now we're going to move into our first poll for the webinar, and we want to hear from you. What is your biggest knowledge management struggle today? So you're seeing the options on your screen right now, please select the option that resonates most with you. We've included some of the knowledge management struggles that we most often see and hear about in the organizations that we work with. So what you're seeing here is maybe your knowledge is a little bit too text heavy and hard to follow because of it. Maybe it's a bit siloed. It's difficult for the right person to access the information that they need at the time that they need it. Maybe there's multiple versions of the procedures. We've all experienced the Post-it note version of a knowledge base. So maybe there's a few different versions of information out there. And because of that, some are now outdated. Could be that your processes are a bit incomplete, or maybe they're entirely in the mind of your experts. And finally, maybe you're struggling more with not really having a clear owner for your knowledge. So please select what resonates most with you. And I see our results are in. So it looks like the majority are struggling with procedures that are really text heavy and hard to follow. We hear that a lot. You are definitely not alone. I think the results of the poll show that you're not alone there. Text heavy information, it's really hard to link concepts and get all of the exceptions, all of the soft skills that people use in their role captured in there. By the time you capture all of that, it's even more text heavy. So totally understandable that most of you are kind of dealing with that struggle today.
I notice here as well, incomplete and undocumented processes is our next heaviest bucket. So maybe when we get to the knowledge section of the framework that we're going to unfold, Kirsten, it'd be great if you kind of lay out to people why it's so important to design with the end user in mind, right? So what could be incomplete information for them? So we'll try to speak to that a little bit as well.
Absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about how we leverage the mind of the subject matter expert to build content as well.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. So next, we're going to talk about how having a solid knowledge governance framework in place is going to help solve for some of these struggles that you're facing with your knowledge today. So at the very beginning, Jacqueline spoke to how it's really critical to establish a framework for creating and managing knowledge. And knowledge governance is that framework. So this framework provides a set of best practices that are used to manage, scale, and safeguard your organization's information. Having that strong framework in place is really critical because it ensures that your knowledge is up to date and accurate, compliant, and accessible to everybody who needs it. And so it truly is the solution to those common knowledge management struggles that we talked about via our poll. And especially, it's important to have clear roles and responsibilities for your knowledge management. It ensures that better and more timely decision-making happens in your organization, and that decision-making is in alignment with your strategic business goals and your investments. So why does knowledge governance matter? Well, it matters because a knowledge strategy really must be considered for successful knowledge delivery. So that's what you're seeing here. So when you think about knowledge strategy, think about these things. Who manages processes in your organization? When processes change, who manages those changes? So we know that your organizations are probably constantly growing and evolving, which means that procedures grow and evolve with them. So think about who is responsible for maintaining those procedures and making sure that they get out to the employees who use them. Think about, do you have the right level of detail documented? So that's what Jacqueline mentioned before is, do you have the level of detail that a brand new person first day on the job would require a new hire? And do you have the right level of detail capturing the tips and tricks of your tenured employees, people who have been doing this for a really long time? So think about, do you have the right information for the right audience at the right time? And finally, for knowledge strategy, just think about how you'll track performance and compliance. What does that look like? How do you know if people are following your procedures? So once you really have considered these things and you have a knowledge strategy in place, you can really start to think about knowledge delivery. So from here, thinking about things like who needs access to which procedures and information. How will you present your knowledge? So are you going to leverage a visual knowledge base? Are you going to stick with text? What is that going to look like? And where is it going to be delivered? So what are you using to deliver information and keep it up to date and make it easily accessible? So really, no matter who, how, or where you're delivering your knowledge, you need to have guardrails in place to protect your team and your business. So let's talk about how knowledge delivery really impacts your AI investment. We know that AI is likely a part of the strategic business conversations that you're having today, or maybe you've already actually started on your AI journey. What you need to know and what you're seeing here is that ineffective information will ultimately lead to ineffective outcomes for your AI initiatives. So without solid knowledge governance, implementing AI and automation is really only going to increase the struggles that you're facing today with your knowledge management. And so some of those struggles that we talked about earlier. You're seeing a term that we use sometimes here at Procedureflow, garbage in equals garbage out. So you're probably wondering, what do we mean by garbage? Or maybe a better term is just ineffective information at the end of the day. And it really reflects the selections that you saw on our poll. So it can look like knowledge living in many different places and systems, multiple versions and outdated versions. It can mean the information mainly living in the mind of the employees who have done this work for a while. It could mean that your knowledge is mainly outdated or that you don't have clear ownership or accountability for the quality and maintenance of your knowledge. So that's what we mean when we say bad information. We know that this impacts companies and their AI strategies all the time. And we heard that most of you are experiencing some kind of knowledge management struggle today. So you're definitely not alone. We know that 77% of the average US company's knowledge is just poor quality in that it's experiencing some of these kind of things. It's inaccurate, redundant, obsolete, or trivial. And unfortunately, that poor quality of information comes with a hefty price tag. It costs organizations an average of $12.9 million annually. So it just reiterates the point that the hygiene of your knowledge is really critical to ensuring success with your AI and automation initiatives. So next, consider this. Are you one of the organizations relying on broken information to feed your AI projects? We do know that 100% of AI projects that lack integration to a modern knowledge management system, like Procedureflow, will fail to meet their customer experience and operational goals, unfortunately. And IT leaders are really confirming what we're saying here. They're confirming that ineffective knowledge is leading to poor AI outcomes. So in fact, 45% of IT leaders report that poor knowledge management makes them actually unable to leverage AI at all. So the solution is investing in knowledge that works and in knowledge governance. So to just name a couple of the benefits that you'll experience from implementing your knowledge management strategy, you'll see consistency and accuracy in processes, which reduces the risk for non-compliance and boosts employees' confidence in their role. It's what we're all about. You'll find that decision-making is much better facilitated when there's clear people who know what their role is in the decision-making. You'll see an enhancement in the way knowledge is shared and collaboration between teams. And most importantly, by implementing your knowledge governance strategy, you've created a foundation that's really scalable across your business. Now it's time for our next poll. So we want to hear from you. How confident are you that your knowledge is ready for AI? So please select a number that resonates with you between 1 to 10, 1 being not confident at all, and 10 being completely confident you have no struggles today.
Be curious if before your explanation, people might have thought maybe a 5, now I'm a 3, or if I thought I was a 3, now I'm a 6. I'd be curious to hear in the chat.
Yeah, understandable if you need a few seconds to rethink.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay, so we're seeing everybody kind of, for the most part, landing around a 4, kind of equal spread between a 4 and a 7. So moderately confident is kind of the feel we're getting from you today. And again, very understandable.
Yeah, I think these are really nice and honest answers. I'd be really curious if you want to pop some examples into the chat. What are some things that you're trying right now to become more AI ready? Because that's what we're really going to look at in the next section as well, is what are some things. So if you're kind of at a 4, you're trying to get to, a 5, 6, 7 of confidence, or you're at a 7 and you're trying to unlock that some more. Would love to kind of understand, what are you thinking about today in your operation when it comes to getting AI ready? And do you see that as a different lens than how you're supporting your frontline employees as well? So we're going to talk today about, how can you actually bring those together? And if you're designing for one, how can it fit both? Because ultimately your team members are the ones who are going to be reaching for that knowledge that you're also probably going to be looking to load your bots up with. So we'll share a little bit about that. Anything else, Kirsten, from your end before we dive into the maturity model?
Nothing else from me. I think you'll kind of see how your feel for readiness factors into your current knowledge management value state. So think about that as Jacqueline takes you through it.
Love it. All right. So interestingly, I think if we would probably also put out a poll right now that said, do you feel like you do have a successful knowledge management strategy at your organization? Most typically do say yes, and we think you'd be right. So where we actually would tend to see the little bit of a difference and challenge you a little bit more is related to how mature that knowledge management model is. And so that's what we're really going to dive into today. So how is your model being utilized? And most likely this is where your biggest opportunity lies. So at Procedureflow, and particularly within Customer for Life, as we start to work with you as a customer, we do like to think about knowledge management in stages. And these are the 5 stages that we try to move you through, with each one delivering a little bit more value and opportunity than the previous. So most organizations that we'll begin working with closely fit within stage 1 when we start to assess, what does your current state knowledge look like? Is it in the minds? Is it documented? Who has access to that information? There's typically a really nice foundation of information that exists within the organization. But what tends to happen is it might be quite text heavy. Maybe it's formatted as these really lengthy articles. So they exist, they're documented, but they might not really be easy for people to either find or people to be able to reach for and actually use real time during their service delivery, which I think a lot of you really highlighted within that first poll as well. Text heavy is tricky. It's got the information in there, but then what do I do with it? So the first milestone we really want to help you achieve is moving you up the radar to start to create the visualized knowledge processes. So if we can help you transition into visual guides, same information that you're documenting today, but what you're immediately fixing is that ability for your team members not only to find the information faster, but now they can move through it at the speed of a conversation and really navigate what's the best thing I need to do for this particular customer, real time in a call, or real time if I'm doing a back office transaction. How can I really make sure I have confidence to get this right the first time? And so we start to liken that as a GPS experience. If I'm driving in a town I'm unfamiliar with, my GPS is going to help me understand when to turn left and right with confidence. That's exactly what we want to help you achieve by visualizing those same processes. So it immediately gives a very different confidence to your end user that you've built out these great processes for. So from there, after we go ahead and we start helping you visualize your processes, we're looking at getting you into a more collaborative opportunity with your knowledge as well. Because I think if there's one thing we can probably all agree on, the only thing that's really constant within an organization is change. And so processes aren't exempt from that. So, how do you have the ability today to crowdsource that information? Are you completely reliant, as the knowledge owners on your team of being told or hoping to get informed that a process has changed? And if that's the case, what are your controls today to make sure that you've got the easiest way to be kept informed real time, so that as business processes are changing, you're getting that information and your documentation is reflective of the absolute current state of your business. So we tend to find that that's a challenge for most organizations that we work with. And so really working with you to unlock collaboration opportunity within your organization not only means I have more confidence, I can probably start to score 7, 8, 9, 10s in terms of confidence that my knowledge is up to date and better captured, but it also now has set me up, because of the version control opportunity, I'm also probably a little bit safer on risk. I've reduced that risk that something was rolled out and process was changed yesterday, but I haven't published it yet. Kirsten's taking that call and doing it based on, last week's procedures. And so are we now non-compliant with these new expectations? So how can we just make sure that your processes are living at the time of your business real time? So we want to move you to that collaboration. People can suggest change, you publish it, it's live, you've really shortened down that opportunity to be effective. So moving forward from there, you really want to get strategic. So one of the things that we love is data-driven insights. So creating a capability to understand what information your teams are actually reaching for and how they're using it in the call is going to unlock all kinds of new insights that you may not be using today. And so one of the things that we'll definitely work through with you are figuring out what strategies are going to help you, understand your usership of your knowledge information. And in this case, it would typically be flows or entry points when we're looking at procedure flow. So where are your users living? What are they reaching for? And how long is it taking them to get through that information? So now as you start to analyze this data, you can actually make decisions on, you know what, this is a call volume that we get all the time and we don't see anybody reaching for that. Why may that be? Is it documented clear enough? Are they falling down and getting stuck because I missed some system steps along the way? Now they know not to look at it, or they're just calling over to the senior line. So what kind of data can you help them understand and start arming them with some actionable strategies? So we get you set up for success in understanding what to think about when it comes to how your knowledge is impacting your operations. And then most of you have already indicated, AI is where you're looking to get to. And so if we haven't yet, set the foundation to be able to do that, to Kirsten's earlier point, are we feeding our new bots broken information or partial information that's also then going to set our bot experience up for some challenges? So as you've started to conquer the previous 4 pillars before it, and you're starting to get into an innovative state, what you've also now done is laid that foundation to not only provide your team members what they need to be successful, but you've also built the foundation now to feed a really smart bot that's also able to produce these GPS maps and flows to continue that visual experience and take that extra thinking and confusion out of it. So we'll work with you to make sure, as you're thinking about your knowledge strategy, how also are you going to be able to feed this into your chat experience or your internal search experience to make sure that you've got a really nice holistic approach? This is how your knowledge can scale. And so, without one of these being thought through or skipped in its context, that's when we tend to see folks revert back to this documented number 1 stage. So how can we help you lay that foundation so that you can optimally achieve and scale at large, and then just continue to repeat that? So based on what we just showed you, we would love to kind of get a glimpse from you as a group. Where would you put yourselves today in terms of that maturity model? So stages 1 through 5, documented, guided, collaborative, strategic, and innovative. And then what we'll start to talk through is what are the frameworks that you might be able to focus your individual teams on to help you move forward into those next stages. So take a quick moment, and we'd love to see where you would place your organization in terms of the AI readiness and just a general maturity model. Give it a couple seconds here. Here it comes. 1. Okay, that's honestly that. Thank you for saying that. So this is completely typical to what Kirsten and I would generally see when we're originally starting to work with some folks. So I love seeing a mixture in here. We've got some guided, some collaborative, some strategic. And very interestingly, none of you feel just yet ready to feed your automation experience, but I would probably venture to guess most of you have that as a strategic priority that your leadership is expecting you to, to have some solutions on this year. So you've come to the right place. This is definitely the right conversation for you. And what we're going to do, you're not alone. If you scored 1 undocumented, that's absolutely the right starting point. And so we're going to dive into why the framework matters. And I would hope that there's going to be at least a couple of nuggets here today that you'll be able to take back. And we'd love to continue this conversation because there's some real quick fixes we can make to help you visualize your processes and get that strategy built out for you. So this is our governance framework, very, very high level boiled up. This consists of, I would say, dozens of individual deliverables that need to happen when you're on your knowledge journey. And so what we've done is we've bubbled these up into strategic pillars. And so, knowledge capture that we've talked about, that's just the beginning. This really is about how are you creating repetitive success when it comes to governing your knowledge and your teams who are both informing and publishing that knowledge to keep your business moving. So we're going to dive into each of these, but high level, we've got knowledge, roles and responsibilities, training and enablement. How are you actually getting your information out there, and who's helping to make sure that they've got the right skills and right information of how to use it? Objectives and KPIs. Are you measuring that impact today? Change management and communications, as well as continuous improvement. So this is personalized every day. These are the pillars that we live in. So we'll share just a really high level about kind of what thought processes go into each of these key areas. So Kirsten's going to kick us off with knowledge.
Great, thanks. And so while this is our first pillar, it's good to keep in mind that all of these pillars are kind of working simultaneously. So it's not a steps by any means. You'll kind of see as we go through the 6 pillars how they all kind of work in tandem and inform each other at the end of the day. So this is just our first pillar, knowledge and content strategy. This is all about defining how your content is going to be captured, how it's going to be created, and ultimately maintained long term. So Jacqueline did a great job at the very beginning talking about how knowledge management is just a lot more than just simply documenting your processes, though that's a great place to start. And I think you kind of see that reflected here. There's really a lot to consider before moving forward with your knowledge documentation. And so to inform your knowledge strategy, you really need to start with an assessment of the current state of your organization's knowledge. So some questions to answer when you're doing a current state assessment are things like, who owns your knowledge today? Do you have a dedicated team responsible for knowledge management in your organization? Is it one person who also has several different roles? Who is that person? We want to make sure to engage them. Where does it live? And is that location working well for your business? Is it accessible? And how is it accessible to those who need it? What does it look like? Is it heavy text? Is it articles? Is it visual like Procedureflow? And how do you communicate changes? So we spoke about how organizations are constantly changing. How do you make sure those changes get communicated? So answering these questions as a first step really helps you to better understand the current state of your knowledge, and that helps you understand where you want to go in the future. So it's a great place to start. From there, you can move into your knowledge documentation, beginning with thinking about your knowledge structure. So information architecture, just another name for how are you going to set up your knowledge and who is going to have access to it. So just to give you an example of what we would have you think about is think about, for example, how you're going to represent common processes. So processes that every single person in the organization follows, like submitting a vacation request or something like that. How are you going to represent that and separate that, if you need to, from role-specific processes, making sure that each individual has exactly the content they need at the right time? So think about how you're going to set it all up so that it's easily accessible and every person knows exactly what they need and where to find it. And from there, we get into the nitty-gritty. We get into content creation. So Procedureflow's approach, to give you an example of how we approach content creation, is we are all about visually documenting the processes. We are able, with Procedureflow, the product, to break those processes down into really easy to follow instructions. So like Jacqueline said, very much like a GPS. So we're lucky that we have Procedureflow because it allows us to capture a lot of great information right from the mind of the subject matter experts. So that's our approach to content creation. We interview the people who do this best. And we don't want to just know, what do you do? What do you click? We want to know, how did you know to do that? Subject matter experts are often very skilled and they've been doing this a long time. So you got to get them thinking about, what would you need to know if you were a new hire? So it's that new higher level of detail. And when you're able to involve more complexity that's simply captured, you can start to ask about soft skills too. So that's a strategy we take as well, is how did you make your customer feel when you were doing this? How do you have empathy throughout if you're handling someone live? So we interview the subject matter experts directly and capture the content visually in flowcharts. So as you create your content, keep content strategy top of mind. And now we're going to talk about how establishing clear roles and responsibilities is just a really critical piece for that content strategy. So understanding the key roles and responsibilities for successful knowledge governance is really important for ensuring the right people are assigned to the right responsibilities. And I think we all know when there's ambiguity around who's responsible for something, key decisions really can just go unmade at the end of the day, and employees feel really scattered and kind of unsure of who to go to for what they need. So really important to have the right people assigned, and really important for them to understand their role. So having clearly defined role profiles really helps each individual understand, what am I responsible for, and what enablement do I need to be able to be successful in my role around knowledge governance? So just to give you a couple examples, some of the roles and accountabilities that you'll want to think about for knowledge governance, and ones that we really strongly establish at Procedureflow, are roles like an overall knowledge owner across the organization, content approvers. So once the content's built, who approves and publishes that content? Content creators. At Procedureflow, we call them process mappers. Who are those people? It takes a certain mind to really lay down a process. Who are those subject matter experts? So in other words, who's informing the content that you're documenting? And then a key role for us, we love to talk to trainers. These are the people who are going to get that knowledge into the hands of your employees. So they're a key stakeholder there as well. And finally, you'll want to think about interdependencies. Who else in the organization is impacted by this information? What do they need from you? And what do you need from them? So having that really well established and documented really just helps everybody work a lot better together at the end of the day. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to lean into pillar 3, which is training and enablement. Enablement is a core part of our focus here at Procedureflow, and it's really a critical pillar of successful knowledge strategy. So very similar to the knowledge and content strategy pillar, everything starts with a training discovery, or a training assessment, in other words. So once again, just really important to understand your current state of training to understand where you want to go. So understanding things like, who is responsible for delivering training to the brand new hire? Who's responsible for ensuring that existing employees get up to date on the information as it grows and changes? So who trains on minor process changes? And who trains them on brand new procedures? Maybe you're integrating a new system into your business. Who is responsible for rolling that out? So really identifying these people helps you understand who you're going to involve here as key stakeholders in training and enablement. From there, take a look at your curriculum. So we know that adult learners learn best with an experiential approach. So think about, how can you leverage a scenario-based approach for your training today? Are you doing a little bit of that? Is that your whole approach? So start looking at your curriculum and understanding how you'll integrate that knowledge that you've documented. And we don't just want to think about trainers and training people here. There's lots of people who reinforce procedures in an organization. So think about other people like supervisors and coaches, those people who reinforce the procedures and drive users back to the knowledge that you have documented. What enablement do those people, those supervisors and coaches, what do they need to be successful? And then also think about the people who are interested in insights and reporting around procedure usage and compliance, quality, and that kind of thing. Those are important people to engage too. Where are they getting their data from? And what's their role in communicating about that throughout the organization? So actually, speaking of those who reinforce change and coach to insights, actually leads us really nicely into our next pillar.
Awesome. Great recap, Kirsten. So for objectives and KPIs, this is probably one of the biggest opportunities that we tend to see. A lot of the folks that we'll start working with, they know their knowledge is or isn't working, but they can't necessarily understand why, or they don't have the data to back it up. And so when it comes to, am I adopting the knowledge that I'm publishing and putting out? Simply put, what gets measured gets done. So really taking the time to understand where your team members are using knowledge and how efficiently they're actually moving through that knowledge really can help you shape how you measure the success of your knowledge for your organization. And I see, just recognizing a lot of the names on this call, you are the folks who are, spending your days putting together this great piece of work. And so how can we make sure that the great effort that you're putting forward and all these great insights that are coming your way from your business partners are actually being used long term. And so how can we make sure the awareness is out there? So if you're not already having these conversations internally, we really encourage you start having some specific cadences with the business partners, with your training partners, with your reporting partners, and talk about, we've rolled this out, we've got 100 people we expect to be using it. How many are? Are they the people that we would expect to be in there and using it? What is their performance and how is that related to the quality outputs that they're putting out there? If one of the biggest aha moments that we tend to see is maybe our medium or our lower quality performing team members, now that you're looking at data, you can actually tell they aren't reaching for that. They might be solving their customer service delivery from memory, or, we do tend to see a lot of agents have come up with their own OneNote solutions, or they've made their own version of your processes out there. So what do we need to do to make sure that they feel just as confident reaching for the great materials that you've put out as they do of their own version? And Kirsten used the word versionitis earlier. So how can you let them know we're monitoring this and we can see that it's more successful when you do reach for the great stuff that we're putting out? That is going to be tied into your business objective. So are you capturing that and having those conversations regularly? As you do, you're going to set yourself up to be able to have a lot of data-driven decisions. And that might be at the operations level, but it also might be able to arm your team leaders with team level information or even agent level information. So find out what your benchmarks are, get really prescribed about what it is that you want to measure. And I will say, a lot of folks, when we start these conversations, AHT, if you're a contact center leader on the call with us today, AHT is probably the number one thing that you're trying to move with your organization. It's very, very important across the board. But are we thinking about the behaviors that actually drive towards your AHT? And so when it comes to knowledge management, that's where we really like to try to set your primary objectives so that you can eventually impact that AHT. But what we'll look for today is setting you up for success on, can my employees now, avoid having to call over to the helpline for support? They can now self-serve better. That means I'm getting better first call resolution. My hold time eventually is going to go down because I don't need to wait to be serviced by one of my internal colleagues who've done this before. So what are all these great knowledge-related impacts that we can actually track and measure together? So think really clearly about, what are the things that reaching for knowledge is having an impact on in my organization, and then find out, what those benchmarks are today and trend against it. So we love those conversations. And we really do try to track success together. We want you to be able to tell that internal story of the great work that your team is doing. The piece that'll help you enable your success story is having a really sound change management plan around it. So this is probably my ultimate favorite pillar of work that we get to do. So it is about having a change management plan, but it really boils down, to just these few components. So how are we helping our team members prepare for this change? And, one of the things I would say is, even Procedureflow, we're a technology company, but it really is a people change. As you're rolling out new visual knowledge, or you're rolling out new flows for those of you who are already adopting visual knowledge, we're really asking people to interpret information a little bit differently and to reach for information a little bit differently. And so how am I helping them to prepare for that change, both as an end user, if I'm the person who has to be able to take this and be able to execute my desk level work at high performance? What does that need to be? What kind of training and enablement do I need to know about? What kind of awareness do I need to know? Do I understand what's in it for me and why I would want to lean into this change? So really think about, how we're getting them ready for this. And then think about that for each of your key stakeholder groups. So your leaders as well, they might be an end user, but they're also going to enable the rest of your team members to be able to be successful with adopting these changes as well. So did they understand how they can borrow these coaching insights and have really productive, confident conversations with your team members to put them at ease and help them really embrace this change as well? So where are you creating your champions? When it comes to adoption strategies, how are we going to make sure that the people that you really have bought this for and that you're targeting to have these great knowledge articles in front of, are they using it? And so, what gets exciting, we love to see, teams come up with really fun launch activities that you're hiding, little Easter eggs or making scavenger hunts that it's getting them into maybe some of the flows that they forgot existed, or you're about to go into a seasonal a seasonal emergency weather event or something like that. So, are you coming up with strategies to help present people and remind people that you've got steps? So maybe they haven't seen that in a while. You want to make sure it's back on their radar in a really positive way. Once those calls or those tasks start coming in, they're now reaching for the latest and greatest material. So how are you helping them remember that this great information is there that you're publishing as well? Reinforcing the change. This is really everybody's, role at the end of the day. Are your senior supervisors and your senior line, team members, if someone calls them over for help, are they just giving the answer, or are they really helping to set that person who called up for success by saying, let's look where you found that. Here's the flow that you can go find that for future. Let's star this information together because you'll probably get this call again, and this way you'll have it for future. Your coaches are doing that. If there's quality folks on the phone today, how are you adding these positive coaching opportunity moments in your call evaluations as well, right? If they tried to answer from memory, they got it wrong, you can see their screen. Some really great opportunity for next times is reminding them that there's a flow out there, or there's a knowledge article that they can be reaching for in case this ever happens again, or really positively reinforcing if you do see them reach for the right knowledge information and use that during their interaction as well. So, let people know, you're not policing them, but let people know you see them making these really great strides forward, and they'll tend to make even more of them. So as you complete the rest of these 5 pillars, what you've really done is set yourself up for this evergreen continuous improvement strategy, because that is probably the hardest part with a knowledge management approach. Is you build it, you can't set it and forget it. Like we said, change is a constant. And so if you've really thought through each of these pillars, and you've got, as Kirsten mentioned, you've got your teams carved out, everybody understands their role in generating information, publishing information, informing, communicating change, getting all these things out there. You've set up the success that your team needs to be able to do this repetitively. And that is how your business continuity is going to be most successful. So at the same time, as you're keeping all of this updated and you've got your controls in check to continue those functions forward, you've actually been able to reduce future risk and really future-proof yourself against these events as well. And what we find to be true is once you've got really consistent knowledge practices in place, because folks now understand how to drive through visual knowledge, if you did have, some sort of emergency, some sort of maybe redeployment that you have to do with your people because you have unexpected call volumes coming in, you've now also been able to future-proof your business from a multi-skill perspective as well, because I can now sit in front of this great information and trust that as long as I navigate through it like a GPS, I'm very agile to be able to get to those ideal service outcomes. So how are we really helping set ourselves up? It's really taking really good intentional focus on the first 5 pillars, and then making sure it's set up in a way that's scalable and repeatable overall. So these are our high level of the 6 pillars that we lean into. So what we'd love to kind of get a sense of, we already had a chance to understand your confidence levels overall, but where would you say now, having kind of scratched the surface of what these pillars are, which one is it that you think you could focus into that would give you the greatest opportunity to achieve better knowledge management governance at your organization? So we've got the knowledge pillar, roles and responsibilities, training and enablement, objectives and KPIs. Maybe you want to measure something you haven't measured before, change management, and continuous improvement. So we'll look forward to seeing, what those top areas of focus for you would be. Perfect. We see some rolling in. Here it comes. So 5% knowledge, roles and responsibilities. Yeah, that's really interesting. This makes a lot of sense. I think what we tend to see, especially as we start early implementations with folks, is a lot of organizations tend to have a short-term vision on knowledge. They know they need to get it set up. And so maybe you've assigned some resources to do that, to come out of the gate strong. You've got your mappers, or you've got your SMEs, you've got your knowledge experts ready. but then what is the ownership of that long term? So would love to understand if that's kind of the pieces that you are looking, is who's going to inform this and who's going to make sure that it can be set up long term. It's not just to set it and forget it. So how are we making sure the controls are in checks to continue that forward? And then continuous improvement. I really think these two are highly related as well. Like who's going to be that person or that team that continues to make sure that your engine is running. And if power does go out, do you have what you need to make sure people can still be reaching for that information? So Procedureflow, we have offline backups, so it's no matter where or when things are going to go down, your folks can still reach for that trusted information. So what do you need to do to be able to get to that level of comfort that if we needed to, we can still be able to be effective? So this is great. A lot of good mixed results there. So just to kind of wrap things up, we did mention a few organizational impacts. So these are a few just examples that our customers tend to have seen from implementing the knowledge governance framework that we just chatted through. So as you can see, we did talk a lot about training today, but this really does go beyond just training and customer support. And in our most recent CSAT results as well, our customer satisfaction surveys, we actually had 61% of respondents say that they can actually create 50% faster with their process time as well. So if you think about time to proficiency, 75% reduction there, we typically see between 50 and 75%. What that's really trying to say is maybe you have a new hire cohort, they've come in and they're now reaching basically the quality results that your tenured team members would meet. They're meeting those same objectives 75% faster than they would have. So they're coming out more confident. They're coming out with the ability to self-serve this information, which tends to also mean they've got their average handle time reduced, and that's usually related to the 50% of escalation reductions as well. So because I can self-serve now, I don't need to go call over and tap Kirsten for her help. I can really trust myself to guide myself through those flows. So as you've built this foundation for knowledge, not only are you publishing information faster, but people are actually being able to operationalize some really impactful business results from that. So as you make these small strides forward, on average, we tend to see at least 15% operational cost reduction overall. So the goal here, you don't want to boil the ocean when it comes to measuring out your customer success metrics. Think about all the different ways that knowledge is truly impacting the audience that you've built it for. And let's figure out how we can help them self-serve it more, because that will trickle into the bottom line and those overall objectives that you're probably looking to improve upon. So just a few examples there. Perfect. So that really comes to the end of what we were hoping to chat through with you today. So this is our knowledge governance framework. We are absolutely going to make sure that you get a copy of this following, but knowledge, roles and responsibilities, training and enablement, objectives and KPIs, change management and communications, and continuous improvement. So what we would really recommend, go through the strategies that you do today. So whatever the processes are that you've decided as an organization, help you manage your knowledge. And an exercise we would recommend is just take these pillars in mind and figure out if you can determine which of these deliverables would align with within one of these particular pillars. And that'll usually quickly start to identify, you know what, we've got really good change management and communications, that's in check. We've got that. But you know what? We don't have anything that's actually related to making sure we're managing roles and responsibilities. So that's one way to approach just getting a bird's eye view to, what are we doing really great at to continue? And where might be those opportunities like you identified in the previous poll. So we'll look forward to hearing how that goes. Mel, I know I see some things in the chat here. Did we have any questions rolling in?
We've got lots of great discussion. Everyone, I think, is excited about this information, and I think there's going to be some great takeaways for everyone that joined today. So thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Kirsten. I can just always feel your passion and excitement for this topic, and you always bring so much value to the table when it comes to talking about knowledge governance and these key stages that our customers and prospects and just generally anyone should be thinking about when they think about their knowledge strategy and growth and how their teams leverage this. So I encourage, we do have a few minutes. I do encourage you to drop any questions you have in the Q&A or the chat. as well, we'd be happy to take a few minutes to answer them. I would love to hear maybe what was your key takeaway today? What was an aha moment for you, or what was something maybe you weren't thinking about when you were thinking about your knowledge management and knowledge strategy and your team and how they engage with your knowledge? I would love to hear maybe something that you found very insightful today, or something that you're even using and you just got a little extra value out of working through it with Kirsten and Jacqueline today. So be sure to drop that in the chat there. Thank you for participating in the polls as well today. Those were super insightful. We love seeing the progress that people are making and what they're considering when they're thinking about their knowledge management as well. So it was really great to see where everyone was at. We appreciate the honesty and transparency as well. We know it's hard to admit maybe when you're not where you're hoping you would be in your journey, but this is one step in the right direction to getting you up those value stages that Jacqueline shared today as well.
Yeah, so true. I think probably one of the things we didn't say today that we really do believe in as well is, it is such a critical function for your organization. And I think that's probably why we like to talk about the stakeholder piece of it all, right? Is really making sure, training is so critical, but the business is so critical, and understanding the end user audience is so critical. And it really is about understanding, what does everybody need in terms of, the types of information that you're documenting, but also what they need to be able to do with it. And so, if nothing else today, those conversations internally of do we have all of our business perspectives being considered? And if not, that's such a great starting place to make sure you can start rounding things out.
I think our responses to our poll really speak to how all of the pillars need to kind of be considered equally, right? Because we were hearing in the beginning, biggest knowledge management struggle is around undocumented procedures and heavy text and the nature of the knowledge, right? But then when we talked about which pillar do you think you could focus most on, it was most on roles and responsibilities. So maybe it's because you don't have those roles and responsibilities defined that's affecting the quality of your knowledge. You don't have that subject matter expert or that person who's responsible for documenting those procedures and getting them out of the mind and onto the page. So that was really interesting to see. Thanks for your honest answers there.
Yeah, Jacqueline, any shocking answers or responses, or was it all pretty validating for you from the polls? What did you think? Was there anything that stood out to you today?
Yeah, I honestly very, very validating. I think the piece is you're not in this alone. This is very, consistent. And I think the big takeaway is like, just stay confident. You're probably on the right journey. It's just, do you have the controls and the strategies in place to help make sure your entire team understands the foundation of what you're trying to build out? Because that's really it. Once you have the foundation, it isn't something we get to build once and hope it survives. It does need to continue to be a living, breathing, evergreen function that you're thinking about all the time, and that you're communicating it with the business all the time. And that is hard because people, it's easier to hope that they're just going to continue to remember those things, but you really are arming them with knowledge, and that knowledge is going to change. And so do we feel really comfortable that we've got the right mechanisms in place to really enable that for folks moving forward? So if you're seeing this going, oh, we got a lot of work to do, it's probably less than you think. It's just about figuring out the strategic way to set that up. And we would invite, tons of one-on-one conversations. Feel free to reach out to Kirsten and I directly, or with your customer success manager if you're a customer of ours already. These are strategies we just love to continue to unfold, and take one at a time. If you feel like there's 2 or 3 pillars in here that you haven't yet had a chance to really consider some solution around, that's okay. Start with one, and we'll continue to build the other, because they really do influence each other. So you'll probably move most forward as you look at one. And I see Travis said the average cost of poor quality was shocking. It really is, and it's such a critical thing, right? Can we just make sure everybody understands, how to lay down that foundation, and when you do, you immediately start to carve into those costs.
Yeah. That's great, Jacqueline. Thanks. Do we want to move to the last slide there? Just on your note with talking to our team, we'd love to have more of those discussions as well. So
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
shoot. Yeah, here we go.
Like Jacqueline said, we would love to continue this conversation with you. We will talk to you about this all day long. We really live and breathe this here at Procedure Flow. So we are always happy to have a discussion. If you have questions come into mind or just something you want to share with us, please reach out to us. We are here to help you implement our knowledge governance strategy and our framework. So if you do have a customer success manager, please reach out to them. They'll help you keep the conversation going around knowledge governance. And if you're new to Procedure Flow, you can talk to our team by scanning the QR code that you see on your screen right now. Easy way to access our team. And like I said, we would be more than happy to continue this conversation with you. So with that, we just want to thank you so much for being here today and for your engagement in our polls. It was really interesting to hear what you're thinking when it comes to your knowledge management today. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jacqueline. Thanks, Kirsten. So great.
Well, have a great day, everyone.